So, every few minutes, a handful of machine learning models send a Bitcoin forecast to a blockchain, and then six more models predict which of those forecasts is about to be wrong. The chain blends it all into one number, checks it when the real price arrives, and pays the models that helped in a token called ALLO. That is the Allora Network, live on mainnet since the 11th of November, 2025. Vodafone's connected car venture is testing it for electric vehicle charging. In June, its forecasts were clearing real trades on Kalshi, a regulated prediction exchange in the United States. And since the 6th of August, it has published a 15-minute volatility forecast for XRP. Look, the homepage says 288,000 workers, and the chain I queried this afternoon says 113. Both numbers are true, and the gap between them is the whole story. So, today we go from an NFT appraisal startup in Boston to an intelligence layer. We explain how one forecast gets made, we read the chain live, and we close with what you can try for free. So come join the Motion Room, our Discord, and make it yours, where we all grow, learn, and build on frontier technologies together. Members get early access to videos, a Friday newsletter, a charts and data channel with our tokenomics and DeFi research, plus daily announcements, hackathons, and job openings. So, the person at the center of this is Nick Emmons, and his path in is more conventional than you might guess. From 2018 to 2019, he was the lead blockchain engineer at John Hancock's Lab of Forward Thinking, the insurer's research group, working on decentralized insurance. That is where he found a corner of game theory called peer prediction, which he described in 2021 as incentivizing decentralized people to answer subjective questions honestly. In September 2019, he co-founded Upshot in Boston with Kenny Peluso, and the first product paid a crowd to appraise NFTs, because the mechanism rewards answers that agree with what other honest experts would say, even when nobody knows the true price yet. Investors liked the math more than the pictures, and by June 2024, Framework, CoinFund, Blockchain Capital, and Polychain had put $35 million into the company across 4 rounds. Now here is the pivot that matters. On the 2nd of February 2024, the company introduced Allora and became Allora Labs, now based in New York, and Upshot's own price models were lined up as the new network's first workers. They kept the insight that you can score models against each other before the truth arrives, and they changed the target to everything. The white paper followed in September 2024. A separate Allora Foundation was announced in January 2025, and mainnet, first promised for summer 2024, shipped in November 2025. So keep that lineage in mind, because the whole system is still a way to pay for honest predictions. So let me walk you through a single forecast, because once you see the pieces, the rest makes sense. Everything on Allora lives inside a topic, and a topic is one question with one scoring rule and one clock. Topic 1 on mainnet asks what Bitcoin's return will be over the next 8 hours, and it scores answers every 75 blocks, which at 5.5 seconds a block is roughly every 7 minutes. Inference workers are the models that actually answer it. Forecasters are a second set of models that do not predict Bitcoin at all, and instead predict how wrong each inference worker is likely to be under today's conditions. The chain turns those predicted errors into what the white paper calls regret, which is simply how much better or worse a worker is expected to do than the network's own last answer. Positive regret means trust this one a little more today. Negative regret means lean on the crowd. And those regrets become the weights behind one blended number that any app can read. Look, that forecaster layer is the part nobody else does, and it is what the team means by context aware. When the real price lands, the third group, the reputers, compute every worker's actual loss and split the rewards. Reputers stake ALLO, and they are paid by their stake and by how closely they agree with each other, which is where the economic security comes from. Underneath it all sits a normal Cosmos chain running Comet BFT proof of stake, with validators paid purely by stake. Now, does any of this actually work? The team's own testnet report from August 2025 measured 53% directional accuracy on 5-minute Bitcoin across 10,000 predictions, which is a small edge, statistically real, and self-reported. So now the token, and I want to read it from the chain rather than from a press release. ALLO has a hard cap of 1 billion. The allocation published in October 2025 gives about 31% to early backers, 21% to network emissions, 18% to core contributors, and roughly 9% each to the foundation, the community, and ecosystem grants, with about 20% circulating on launch day. Here is a detail most coverage skips. The mainnet chain actually started on the 23rd of December, 2024, almost a year before the token, and the very first governance proposal set the community tax to 100% on purpose, so no rewards could flow during the tokenless year. On the 11th of November, 2025, ALLO listed on Binance, Coinbase, Kraken, and OKX. For transparency, BN Crypto reported it fell more than half from its debut within hours as airdrop recipients sold. When I queried the chain this afternoon, 788 million ALLO had been minted, about 10.5 million were bonded, and there were exactly 17 validators, because the maximum validator count is set by governance vote. The staking yield is capped in code at just under 1% a month, the 12% ceiling the white paper describes, and the live figure this week is about 9.5% with a 21-day unbonding period. Look, the honest part is this. Every global whitelist on the chain is switched on today, for workers, for reputers, and for topic creators. Validators join through a form, and the docs say permissionless entry is planned. And put the 11th of November, 2026 in your diary, because that is when the 12-month lock on backers and core contributors ends, and a third of those allocations becomes available. So, back to those two numbers from the open. The homepage counts 288,000 workers, 55 topics, and 692 million inferences. And those are lifetime testnet totals going back to 2024. The Explorer this afternoon showed 15 active topics, 113 workers, 90 reputers, and the busiest topic, Ether price over 8 hours, had 11 models answering. Mainnet is small because the team made it hard to get in. On the 13th of August, they published a promotion and relegation system, where a model has to pass 7 statistical tests on testnet before it is promoted for that topic. Yeah, I would rather see 15 topics with graded models than 55 with noise. Now for the other correction people need. In May, headlines said Allora launched a trading tool called Cobot, and when Cobot began clearing trades on Kalshi in June, the token jumped. Allora's own July post describes Cobot as an application built on the network's inference layer, and says Allora never operates a strategy or holds a position. Cobot is a customer, and I think that is the better story, because a customer paying for forecasts is the business model working. Look at what else shipped this summer. On the 17th of June, Pairpoint, Vodafone's Economy of Things venture, started a proof of concept with Allora Labs that forecasts energy use, charger availability, and charging price at your arrival time, and it is a proof of concept with no published results yet. On the 3rd of July, Forge launched publicly as the arena where models compete. On the 6th of August, 4 volatility topics went live for Bitcoin, Ether, XRP, and Solana. And on the 19th of August, mainnet version 0.17 added classification topics that return probabilities, which is the format prediction markets consume. Emmons put the thesis in one sentence in July, saying, "The future will not be predicted by one model that beats all the others. it will be predicted by many models competing. So who is actually consuming these forecasts? And I checked each claim from the partner's side where I could. The strongest one is Coinbase, whose open source Agent Kit repository for AI agents contains an Allora action provider that fetches topics and price inferences, so that integration is confirmed in code. After that, the picture gets thinner. The partners page lists Say, Aptos, Arbitrum, Katana, and a long tail of agent projects. And a July post names Near, Tron, Mantle, Monad, and Story as chain integrations. But almost all of those rest on Allora's own blog posts, with no partner side announcement and no usage figures. The August claim that Binance Wallet is plugged into the network appears only on Allora's side, so treat it as a claim. What I can verify is the direction of travel. The roadmap promises permissionless validators and new topic types for real-world assets and event probabilities. And this month's classification upgrade is the piece that makes those probabilities possible. So my read comes down to two questions. Allora has built the hard part, a working coordination layer that pays models for measurable accuracy. And the next year will show whether paying customers arrive before the November unlock, and whether the whitelists come off, so the word decentralized matches the chain. So let me leave you with what you can actually do with this. And every one of these is live today. First, you can read a live forecast yourself in about 2 minutes. Sign up at developer.allora.network, take the free key, and the Consume Quick Start in the docs gives you one curl command that returns the network's blended inference for a topic. Second, you can run a model in about 10 minutes because the testnet has two sandbox topics, 69 and 77, with no whitelist and no penalty, and it runs on half a processor core. Third, if you are a builder, the Forge Builder Kit gives you a baseline model in a notebook, and the 4 volatility topics from August currently have only 5 or 6 models each, so they are the least crowded place to compete. And fourth, write down the 11th of November, 2026, because that is the day the backer and team lock expires. Look, my takeaway comes down to one habit. Ignore the lifetime counters on the homepage and read the Explorer instead, because the small live network is the honest one, and it is the one that is growing. So, if this kind of primary source research is useful to you, subscribe and turn on notifications, because next week we go back to the request board and pick the next one. Yeah, come join the motion room, grab early access, and I will see you in the next one.